midnight screams.
The silence was the first wrong thing. It was the third day of our 5-day hike through the most remote section of the Appalachian Trail I'd ever seen. The plan was simple, the kind of simplicity city dwellers like us craved. Disconnect, breathe the pine-scented air, and forget the pixelated hellscape of our daily lives. There were 4 of us. Leo, my brother, with his meticulously researched gear and laminated maps. Ben, his best friend, a bear of a man with a laugh that echoed through valleys. Sarah, my girlfriend, whose quiet strength was the anchor of our group. And me, the amateur, just trying to keep up. We'd been laughing that morning. Ben was complaining about the weight of his pack. Leo was correcting his posture for the 10th time, and Sarah was pointing out the way the light filtered through the canopy, painting everything in shades of emerald and gold. It was perfect. That's what made the transition so insidious. There was no crack of thunder, no sudden chill, just the slow, steady draining of sound. The birds stopped singing first. I didn't notice until they were already gone. Then the constant, whispering rustle of the wind through the leaves stilled. The buzz of insects vanished. It was as if someone had thrown a soundproof blanket over the world. We walked for another 20 minutes in that eerie quiet before Leo finally stopped, holding up a hand. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. "Hear what?" Ben boomed, his voice obscenely loud in the hush. "That's the point, dude. There's nothing to hear. It's just a quiet spot," Sarah said, but her voice was tight, and her eyes scanned the dense undergrowth. "It happens." Leo unfolded his map, his brow furrowed. "According to the topography, we should be paralleling a stream. We should be able to hear it." We listened. Nothing. "We must have missed a switchback," Leo muttered, more to himself than to us. He traced a line on the plastic-coated paper with his finger. "We'll just cut down this slope here. We'll hit the stream and rejoin the trail." It was the first compromise. The trail was safety. It was known, marked, traveled. Leaving it felt like a transgression. But Leo was our guide, our human GPS. We trusted him. The slope was steeper than it looked, a tangle of exposed roots and loose shale that slid under our boots. The trees grew closer together here, their branches intertwining like bony fingers, blocking out the Sunday. The air grew thick and cool, smelling of damp earth and something else, something faintly sweet and rotten. That's when we saw the path. It wasn't a game trail. It was too wide, too deliberate. It cut through the forest at a slight incline, its floor packed hard and bare of leaves, as if swept clean. It felt older than the main trail, primal. "This isn't on the map," Leo said, a note of excitement in his voice now, the puzzlement replaced by discovery. "This could be an old logging road, a native path even." "Let's not," Ben said, his usual bravado gone. "This place gives me the creeps. Let's just find the stream and get back to the real trail." "This will lead to water," Leo insisted. "Paths always follow water. It's more direct." I looked at Sarah. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head. But we were already off course, and the idea of backtracking up that treacherous slope was worse than following this strange, clear path. So we took it. The wrong path. The silence deepened. becoming a physical pressure on my eardrums. The only sounds were the crunch of our boots on the hard-packed earth and the ragged rhythm of our own breathing. The trees lining the path began to change. The healthy oaks and pines gave way to gnarled, twisted hemlocks, their branches draped in witch's beard moss that hung like tattered gravecloths. The light took on a sickly, greenish cast. After another hour of walking, the path opened into a small clearing, and in the center of the clearing was a tree. It was a massive, ancient sycamore, its bark peeling in great white sheets. And from its lowest, thickest branch, something dangled. It was a bundle of sticks and feathers, bound together with what looked like dried sinew. Animal bones, some small like a squirrel's, others larger, longer, were woven into the structure. It was a crude, ugly thing, and it spun slowly in the dead air as if someone had just pushed it. "What the hell is that?" Ben whispered. "Some kind of folk art," Leo said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. He moved closer, pulling out his phone to take a picture. The locals must. His phone screen was a spider web of fractured color. He cursed, jabbing at the power button. "It's dead. My battery was full." Ben checked his. "Mine too." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I pulled out my own device. Black screen. Sarah's was the same. All of them, drained in an instant. We were truly cut off. "We need to go back. Now," Sarah said. Her voice was low, final. We all agreed. We turned to retrace our steps, a new, frantic energy pushing us. We walked for what felt like an hour, our pace quickening to a near jog. The twisted hemlocks, the sickly light, the oppressive silence, it all looked the same. And then we saw it. The sycamore tree, the bundle of sticks and bones, still turning lazily. We had walked in a perfect circle. Panic, cold and sharp, began to pierce the numbness of our shock. We tried again, this time marking trees with a knife, heading in what we were sure was the opposite direction. The forest seemed to swallow our marks, the path shifting and turning back on itself. Every time, no matter which way we went, we ended up back at the clearing with the sycamore. The sun was beginning to dip below the ridge, plunging the hollow into a deep, premature twilight. The greenish light faded to a murky gray. We were exhausted, terrified, and lost. "We'll make camp here," Leo said, his voice hollow. "We have no choice. We'll build a big fire. In the morning, with the light, we'll find our way out." It was a desperate plan, but it was all we had. We set up our tents in a tight circle, our movements jerky and silent. As Ben gathered firewood from the edge of the clearing, he let out a sharp cry. "Guys, over here." He was standing near a large rock, half hidden by ferns. At its base was a pile of stones, stacked deliberately into a cairn. And nestled among the stones was a leather-bound journal. The cover was stiff with damp and age. Leo opened it carefully. The pages were filled with the tight, frantic script. The first entry was dated 3 years prior, August 12th. Rained all day, made poor time, saw a strange path off the main trail, decided to explore tomorrow. The entries chronicled a solo hiker, a man named Alex, who had found the same path we had. His words started normally, then began to curdle. August 13th. I can't find the main trail. The path keeps bringing me back to this tree. There's a thing hanging from it. It smells like rotten honey. I heard something last night, a sound like rocks grinding together. August 14th. It's watching me. I can feel it in the trees. It mimics sounds. Last night it used my mother's voice, calling my name from the dark. It's trying to learn. My electronics are dead. I'm writing this by firelight. I'm so cold. August 15th. I saw it today. Just a glimpse. It was tall. Too tall. Skin like bleached bark. Its joints bend the wrong way. It was behind a tree, and it tilted its head. And its face, it had no eyes. Just smooth, blank skin. It made that sound, the grinding. I think it's laughing. The final entry was a single sentence, scrawled across the page in a hand that was barely legible. It doesn't need to eat. It just likes to keep things. Leo closed the journal. His face was ashen. None of us spoke. The theory was now a terrible, confirmed reality. We were not just lost. We were prey. Darkness fell, absolute and suffocating. We got a fire going. The flames our only defense against the deepening night. We huddled around it, our backs to the heat, staring out into the impenetrable blackness between the trees. We didn't speak. We just listened. For a long time, there was only the crackle of the fire and the hammering of our own hearts. Then it came. Crunch. A footstep, just outside the ring of firelight. Heavy. Deliberate. We froze. Ben gripped his hiking axe. Leo held a burning branch like a torch. "Hello?" Leo called out, his voice trembling. Silence. Then, from the darkness to our left, a voice. It was Ben's voice, a perfect imitation. "Hello?" It called back, but the tone was all wrong. It was flat, curious, and utterly devoid of warmth. Ben gasped, his face a mask of horror. "It's okay," the thing in the woods said, now using Sarah's voice. "Come out here. I'm scared." Sarah clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Stop it!" I screamed into the darkness. A moment of silence, then the sound of grinding rocks. It was a low, guttural, chittering sound. It was learning, and it was amused. The rest of the night was a slow descent into hell. It circled us, never showing itself, playing a horrific game of mimicry. It used Leo's voice to try and lure Ben away. It used my voice to beg Sarah for help. It was probing us, learning our fears, our relationships, our vulnerabilities. We held our ground, clinging to each other, our sanity fraying into raw nerve endings. Dawn came not with a glorious sunrise, but with a feeble gray light that did nothing to lift the gloom. We were hollow-eyed and trembling. The fire was embers, and that's when we saw him. Sitting with his back against the sycamore tree was a man. He was dressed in faded hiking gear, covered in a fine layer of moss and lichen. His skin was waxy and pale, his head was tilted back, and his mouth was open in a silent scream. It was Alex, the author of the journal. He had been there the whole time, preserved like a grotesque trophy. His eyes were gone, and in the sockets, small pale mushrooms grew. The sight broke the last of our resistance. We ran. We didn't care about direction, about the path, about anything except getting away from that clearing. We crashed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at our faces, fueled by pure animal terror. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs gave out, collapsing in a heap by a familiar-looking stand of birch trees. We were, once again, completely lost. But we were away from that thing, away from the clearing and its grisly guardian. It was Sarah who found it 2 days later. We were stumbling, dehydrated and delirious, following the course of a stream we'd finally stumbled upon, praying it would lead to civilization. She stopped, pointing a shaking finger at a tree. Carved into the bark, fresh and raw, was a single symbol. It wasn't one of our marks. It was a crude, stick figure of a man with 2 long limbs and a smooth, blank circle for a head. It was him, the thing from the clearing. It wasn't just keeping us in his territory. It was marking us, claiming us. We did eventually find a road. A park ranger found us half dead from exposure and brought us to safety. We gave a garbled story about getting lost, about animal attacks. They nodded, gave us water and blankets, and wrote it off as a tragic hiking accident. We never told them the truth. They wouldn't have believed us. We're back in the city now. The lights and noise are a constant, welcome assault, but I can still feel the silence of that hollow, waiting. Leo hasn't spoken a word since we got back. Ben jumps at every sound. Sarah sleeps with the lights on. And last night, I was taking out the trash. The alley behind my apartment was dark and quiet, and from the deep shadow between 2 dumpsters, I heard it. A soft, familiar sound. It was the gentle, grinding chitter of rocks. It's not that we escaped. I understand that now. The journal was wrong. It doesn't just like to keep things in its hollow. Sometimes, it likes to let them run. I am often visited by strange creatures. It's starting to get annoying. The cottage I live in sits in a small clearing surrounded by large old trees. They're the kind that are so big your hands wouldn't touch if you were somehow able to duplicate yourself and hug it from opposite sides. I love them. They're my sentinels, silent, rigid bodies reaching high into the sky with a countless number of branching, thinning arms. Patient observers standing tall against anything thrown at them. Wind, thunder, torrential downpours. In the dusk, they send long black shadows running along the ground, and in the early morning, dappled light breaks through the gaps between their leaves. The cottage is a small, 1-story house. The only bathroom connects to my bedroom. The kitchen is spacious enough and has a walk-in pantry, and there's 2 rooms, one along the hall and one at the end of it. I use the one at the end of the hall as an office of sorts. The other holds a couch, a TV, though there isn't much signal out here, and a load of still-packed boxes from my initial move. It's been years at this point, and I've started using them as stands instead of unpacking them. Next to the kitchen is a screen door that leads out into an area that's been fenced off. The wire and poles are rusted, but they still stand, and so I haven't bothered to replace them. It was meant to be a garden, but when I bought this place, the area had been overgrown, more jungle than a place to grow fruits and vegetables. The first thing I planted after I weeded and cut and tilled the dirt were tomatoes, a row of them along the fence. Now I regret planting so many. Every year more tomatoes that I know what to do with ripen. I try not to let them fall off and rot. I've thought about selling them. Next I planted a few blueberry plants, and under them strawberries. The strawberries never really took, but they do make flowers every year, despite not bearing fruit. They're cute little things. Kinda looks like an egg in a frying pan. white petals ringing out a bright yellow center. The blueberries are plentiful as well. Though I love blueberries, and so the sometimes bloated harvests never go to waste. I make preserves and the blueberries into recipes I look up online. I could eat them in any form forever. I planted a peach tree and a pecan tree, but neither are big enough to be productive. The peas tries to make peaches, but they always come out small and lumpy. I eat them, but there's never enough to really do anything with them. I've always wanted to live somewhere that's quiet. You could argue that the middle of nowhere is hardly quiet, and you'd be right. Crickets sing and cicadas cry. The air is constantly buzzing with the voices of living things, but it's the kind of loud that soothes me. It's peaceful. It's relaxing. Or it was, for a little while. There is a slight catch to all the comfort. Part of the universe's mechanics is that everything is trying to find equilibrium. Everything wants to even out into neutrality. All that peace and quiet is balanced out by a little bit of chaos that rears its head every so often. I noticed the energy that seemed to crackle in the air when the real estate agent took me on a tour of the surrounding land and then the house. I didn't think anything of it. That was my mistake. Despite this place's little quirk, I wouldn't choose to live anywhere else. I enjoy the solitude, the fresh air. I can sit on my porch in the morning and listen to birdsong. However, that does not mean that I am never annoyed at my circumstances. Case in point, last night and the events from this morning. A light show. A sign that a rift is opening up flashed behind the dark pillars of trees. It changed from mint to hot pink to midnight, then egg yolk, then fuchsia, and finally to pulsing lilac. This happens often enough that I threw a pillow over my eyes and ignored it. I knew what was coming, what this all meant, but I couldn't be bothered. As I drifted back off to sleep, I heard the crackle of energy and high-pitched zing of the rift closing once more. I really wish I hadn't ignored the lights because it was Shia who came stumbling through that portal. Shia, the big boss, the one that Orin and Dryle report to, the one that no one can look at directly. She was used to getting her way and she acted like it. I don't like surprises. It's my preference to greet whoever enters after the light show. That way, I can get a look at them and prepare myself for their appearance. Aring is the easiest to look at. He's the most human-like, though I'm never not aware of the fact that he has 7 fingers on each hand and a mouth that stretches all the way up to his temples. If he were to open his mouth all the way, his face hinges upward like a chute cover. The rest don't have appearances that are easy to accept. They look familiar, but wrong. I see them often enough that I can usually suppress the instinctual jolt that laying my eyes on them always brings around. There's something about Shea, though, that overrides my efforts. I flinch when her gaze flicks over to me and I can't hold eye contact. She is the one thing that I would prefer to only ever have to see once as the second best alternative to never at all. I couldn't be given even that much. I awoke to the sound of muffled movement. Remembering the lights from the night before, I didn't bother to get dressed as I hauled myself out of bed and draped a blanket over my shoulders. Walking into the kitchen, Shia's form was hidden behind the open fridge door. I looked away when it smacked shut. I didn't think about how she got in. I stopped trying to ask her years ago. Shia had her ways. That was as much as I could get out of her. I didn't really understand them. I don't think I was ever meant to. After all, she's not of this world. She's not even of this universe. None of the travelers that come from the light are. You're out of milk, Shea said. Her voice was deep and resonant, lower than any baritone that I've ever heard. It was the kind of sound which rattled through you and settled in your ribs like a second heartbeat. The silence that followed was filled with the resonation of her voice. I knew her mouth didn't move as she spoke. Instead, it floated up from the slits lining her back like gills, though that's not what they are. They twitch and pulse as she pushes air out of them to make sounds. Then I heard the sound of her licking something off of her fingers and claws. I cringed. Shaya hummed thoughtfully. And butter, she added. I finally mustered a look at her. Her skin was gray and dabbled with white and sky blue. A trail of long, coarse hair started from her head and traveled down her back, continuing along the ridge of a long, coiled tail. Her ears were just holes in the side of her head, pulsing open and closed. "What are you doing here?" I asked, tightening the blanket around me as if it might be able to protect me if Shaya got it in her head to attack me. "Don't worry your little head." Shaya hummed and leaned against the counter. She was smiling, or at the very least trying to make the best approximation of a smile. Her face wasn't really built for it. Her skin pinched and stretched as muscles went against their typical use. Instead, she just looked like she was snarling. I almost appreciated her effort to give me a human gesture. On her, though, it just seemed like a mockery. "I won't be here long. Just needed to stop at a checkpoint." Her blue tongue darted out of a broad snout and licked residue out from under her claw. "Is that what this place? My home?" I thought as I gestured to the space we both stood in. "Is?" I crossed my arms. It's generally not a great idea to piss off a creature that could thoroughly turn you into neat little cold-cut slices, but I trusted Shaya's self-control enough to snark. Shaya didn't like leaving a trail or a mess. Killing me would create both. The last thing she needed was the CCU catching a whiff of her scent. "What would you call it?" Her pale blue eyes rolled to meet mine. I looked away. The entire impulse had me turning my back to her. Not something you should usually do when faced with a predator. I trained my eyes to the window. Outside, the trees stood tall against a carpet of green grass. If I unfocused my eyes, her reflection would come into view. That way, I could almost look at her. "I wouldn't call a place I lived in for almost 2 years a checkpoint," I responded. I remember the day I came home and he was gone. The place had felt so empty the days following. And again, I apologize. She wasn't sorry. I could hear it in her voice. I needed Kran to stay put. You know how tricky this can get. I never asked to be a part of this. I wanted to say it. Instead, I didn't say anything at all. Shaya shifted from one foot to the other, then, finally, got out of my kitchen. I felt her air as she passed me. It was like the essence of a hurricane came with them. Dark, foreboding. It washed over me like cold water. Goosebumps prickled around my arms. Blood roared in my ears. My heart fluttered wildly in my chest, straining, afraid, slamming itself against the constraints of its cage. Then it stopped. She was past me. Shaya paused at the front door. Her fingers on the knob, a residue of oil smudged the shiny surface. One peculiar thing about Shaya was that she always snuck her way in, but going out she always used a door. She spared me a look, then said, "You are also out of chicken," and promptly left. I sighed, because I knew I had bought some yesterday. I found my doppelganger. This is a story I need to tell. I don't want to tell it. I don't want to admit that what has happened wasn't a dream or a hallucination. If it's not real, it can't be bad, right? I told myself that for a long time, too long, I used to be a normal person, a normal college student with a busy class schedule, a few good friends, and a less than healthy Sherlock addiction. I was probably on the internet a little too much, discussing headcanons where Cheryl and John were lovers, or taking quizzes telling me where I should live based on how I cleaned my dorm room. I had a good life. It wasn't anything special, but then, that was what most people felt about their own lives. Study, work, do what makes you happy. My dream was simple. Get a decent job, an apartment, a cat, a boyfriend, maybe write some fan fiction on the side. I didn't think I wanted more. And then I found her. I was scrolling through Tumblr while taking the bus home from class, and right there on my dashboard was a reblogged photo of me. Her hair was the same as mine, long and auburn, though where my hair was frizzy, hers was sleek. In the photo, she was eating a fancy meal and smiling just like I did in every one of the admittedly few photos of me. The post linked back to her blog, so I clicked through, and if I didn't know any better, I would have thought it was someone playing a trick on me, creating a fake blog and photoshopping me into these photos. But as I kept scrolling, it was clear this girl had a completely separate life, an adorable cat, a job at a bakery where she shared pictures of her creations, plenty of friends who held garden parties and bonfire nights. She even had her own fanfiction page where she posted short stories from various fandoms. I felt like I was staring at my dream life, the life I could live if I worked harder, if I was intrinsically better than the person I was today. I tried to tell myself this was just one of those coincidental things. How a similar hairstyle can make two people look like twins. But as I moved on with my life, I found myself obsessed. I followed her on every social network, learned she drank her coffee like me, wore her hair up at home like me, even liked the same shows and video games. Number, Dragon Age for life. It didn't take long for me to figure out where she lived. It was only about an hour away, so one weekend I took the train there. I went to the bakery where she worked, but I couldn't make myself enter. I could see her through the window, laughing as she rang in a customer's order, and the sound of her voice sent jolts through my body. I ran off before anyone could see me. I realized how creepy this sounds. Why couldn't I just set up a meeting? We could have made it a thing, like those twin strangers from across the globe. But in the end, I was scared, because seeing her didn't make me feel like I'd found my twin. It made me feel like I couldn't be real if she was, couldn't exist at the same time as she did. I followed her for longer than I'd like to admit. I became an expert at being inconspicuous, at hiding between buildings, at covering my face without drawing more attention, at hiding in her apartment. There was one time I thought she was going to find me as I hid in her closet watching her watch TV. Her building had a concierge who easily let me in when I told him I'd lost my keys. She heard me move, I guess, and started looking around for the noise, but then her door thumped as someone knocked hard, and she moved her focus there. It was her boyfriend, a tall, dark, refreshing drink of water. She forgot about the noise. Neither of them found me. My obsession was causing problems in my life. I was missing class, missing work. I was late on my phone bill, and I'd barely eaten in months. I could barely go a day in my life without wondering what she was doing, how she was living better. I wanted to fix it, though, because there is a gutted emptiness that comes with that kind of obsession. So I found a therapist I could afford. I went to her house, sat on her cushy couch in her room with pictures of the mind and humans making weird poses in the desert. And I told her all about my doppelganger, how watching her, wanting to be her, was ruining my life. She told me I had to work hard to make my own life as valuable as I saw hers, and that we were two separate people. It was impossible for us to both exist at the same time. I had to live my own life. When I left the appointment, I knew what I had to do. I waited until the perfect time, when she would be home alone, our boyfriend out of town, no one to check on us. I went up to the apartment before she got home from work. I had a key, now a spare I'd found in a junk drawer. I waited for her in the closet beside the doorway, and when she came in, I covered her mouth with a chloroform rag until she passed out on the floor. Seeing her this close, it was uncanny how alike we were. We even had the same freckles, the same scar on our thumb from a chain-link fence. I almost wanted to keep her, but I remembered what the therapist said. We couldn't live like this, not both of us. A week later, the newspaper published an article about the pressures of college after a student was found in her dorm room having overdosed on sleep medication. She was a good student, a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, and had recently been seeing a therapist. No one would comment on whether the death was an accident or intentional. As for me, I continued to live my life, my true life, with everything I'd ever dreamed of: an apartment, an adorable cat, a boyfriend, and the occasional short story about my favorite show. The therapist was right in the end. Only one of us could live this life. I had to tell this story because I know there are others out there, a copy of you living a better life or a worse life. If you don't find to them, don't let yourself become complacent. After all, they could be the one to find you. The scariest thing that ever happened to me, the doppelganger story. This happened to me about 2 years ago, around late December of 2020. I was 19 around the time. Me and my girlfriend were at my grandparents' place, having a couple drinks out in the garage until it got too cold to stay out there. It was one of the coldest nights of the year, and there was a bad blizzard that night. We live in Canada, by the way. We both went back to the house around 2 a.m. She went into my room, and I went out in the kitchen to cook something for us in the oven. I was on my phone, standing alone out in the kitchen, when my grandma and my girlfriend both walked out into the kitchen together. It was a bit strange because my grandma is never up that late, and it was even stranger that my girlfriend came out at the same time. The first thing my grandma said to me is, "Don't go back out there tonight. On a night like this, people lose their lives." I was a little bit freaked out because I was just about to head back out to the garage to grab something. I never told anyone I was going back out. My girlfriend and my grandma just stood there staring at me with the weirdest expressions I've ever seen, with very unnatural smiles that did seem right. My girlfriend then walked over and gave me a hug. When I grabbed her, she was ice cold. I commented about this, and when I mentioned how cold she was, her expression changed. Her smile faded, and she looked up at me with really serious, sad eyes and didn't say anything. There was something else I noticed too. She smelled like a campfire, an earthy, smoky smell. There wasn't an explanation for this, and she didn't smell like that earlier. I swear at that moment, I got chills all over. There was something so off about it all, but I couldn't put my finger on it. My girlfriend whispered in my ear, "Don't go outside tonight." She walked back over to my grandma. She stood beside her with her head down and a serious expression, while my grandma was still staring at me with that weird fake smile. It was so bizarre, I just stood there, speechless. The wind began to literally fake. I howled outside. My grandma turned and looked at my girlfriend. "Don't mess with black magic," she said. "Nothing good is gonna come from it." My girlfriend didn't say anything. She continued looking down. I stood there confused. My girlfriend looked up at me. "We have to go now," she said. They both started walking away. My grandma looked back at me for a second. "See you on the flip side," she said with that weird smile. I got another chill through my whole body when she said that. They turned a corner and left the kitchen. I stood there for a while. I didn't know what to make of it all. I decided not to go out to the garage. I'd go out and get my stuff the next morning. I stayed out in the kitchen for another 10 minutes until the food was done. I went back into my room with it. My girlfriend was in bed, laying down. She got up and we put on a movie. I guess I was quiet because she asked me what's wrong. I told her everything was okay. It took me 10 minutes to say something about it because, to be honest, I was still frightened by it. I turned to her and asked why her and my grandma came out to the kitchen. The second I said that, my nose started bleeding. I ran to the bathroom and got something to stop the bleeding. When I went back in the room, I told my girlfriend everything. As you can guess, she said she never went out the kitchen, and she swore on someone's life she was in the room the whole time. She also didn't smell like smoke anymore. We went and woke up my grandma right after, and my grandma said the same thing. She actually thought we were trying to mess with her, and she didn't believe me. We were so freaked out after this, we had trouble sleeping for the rest of the night. The part that really messed my girlfriend up was when I told her about how cold she felt and how she smelt, like smoke. The only explanation we could come up with was that maybe if I went outside that night, something bad would have happened to me. Maybe the spirits of dead relatives watching over me came to me in that form so I wouldn't be scared and they could get the message through. The last part of it that made sense was the part about the black magic. My girlfriend just got a book about witchcraft from her friend the week prior. My girlfriend never opened a book again after this. She took what was said as a warning. I've been thinking about writing this story down for the past 2 years, and my girlfriend encouraged me to finally do it because maybe someone else out there had an experience like this. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it, especially the last thing said. "See you on the flip side."